Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. Well, last episode, Sherlock Holmes, disguised as a London Bobby, delivered us a gift from Susato, a piece of evidence that may save the case, the cat Flabbermat, as we petition to resume our interrupted testimony instead of requesting a summation examination, being granted one final chance by the judge. We then presented the cat Flabbermat against Ashley Graydon's Peephole assertions, learning that Susato had made the peephole with the device while Ryuno was outside, and that was after Mr. Graydon had supposedly saw through it, showing his testimony to be a pack of lies that made no sense as they revealed he had knowledge he shouldn't have, as we now ask how he knew of the peephole's existence in the door at all. What? Well, obviously, Has the cat got your tongue, witness? The peephole on the door was made after the incident occurred, and once I returned to the shop having failed to catch the two burglars, Scotland Yard's investigators arrived immediately. Since that time, the police have been at Windibanks constantly carrying out their investigation. Isn't that right, Inspector Gregson?
Well, yes, of course. The place is chock full of porn articles, and my lads have to thoroughly examine them all. So I gave the order to have officers working around the clock in shifts so we get through it all.
And consequently, there's no way that you, Mr. Graydon, could have gained access to the shop. Therefore, you should have known nothing about the peephole in the storeroom door. So the fact that its existence forms the basis of your testimony is completely inexplicable.
Objection!
And yet, the fact remains that Mr. Graydon did maintain that he witnessed the crime take place with the peephole in the door.
How on earth is that possible?
Could I have a word, please, Lord Van Zeeks? Speak, Inspector. It's just that I really ought to be getting back to the station now to put in my report. There's really nothing more I can add to this testimony, so I've told the same to you. Mission denied. Oh. It's not all the same to me, Inspector. Not at all. You will remain exactly where you are until this trial concludes. Of course, sir. Mr. Graydon. You shouldn't have known about the existence of that peephole. Which can only mean that you must have been informed about it by somebody else.
Objection!
Stop there, my learned friend. You realize, I trust, that the words you just uttered have extremely serious implications. Yes, but the defense believes that the details about the case that Mr. Graydon claims to have seen must have been revealed to him by a certain person before his testimony. And in fact, considering a particular clue we have, there's really only one person that could be.
Who is the person in question, counsel? Who gave this witness details of the crime scene to facilitate his false testimony?
Well, it's really obvious now, isn't it?
Take that!
The truth is, it can only have been you, Inspector Gregson.
Me? Objection!
You had better have some proof to substantiate such a rash claim, my learned friend. Consider the fact that we have only been aware of Mr. Ashley Graydon's identity for the last few hours. We learnt of it only during the course of the trial today.
Indeed. Preparations for his testimony were made with great urgency during our hour-long recess, while the police executed the subpoena and brought the man here from the communications station.
And until that time, Mr. Graydon would have had no idea. No inkling that he would suddenly be required to appear in court.
Are you suggesting that until such time as he was summoned?
Yes, my lord. Until then, it's reasonable to assume he knew nothing of the peephole. It was only once Mr. Graydon was in the stand that he realized his position, that he would have to defend himself against the accusation that he was the third intruder. You're suggesting to the court that it was while this trial was in progress that he received the information, so that he could commit perjury in order to save his skin. Exactly. And the only person with knowledge of the investigation that he had any contact with is you, Inspector Gregson.
This is a blooming outrage! Why would I be giving away details of our investigations to this fellow, eh? I was summoned to his lordship's chambers during the recess in any case. Had you forgotten that? Quite true. I had a number of questions regarding the events that transpired at the pawnbrokery.
Which means... the first time these two laid eyes on one another was after proceedings resumed following the recess. Since then, they've been in full view in the stand, where such illicit discussions couldn't possibly have occurred. Ah! Oh, I just remembered something, Runo. Why is it, Iris? There was one time before, wasn't there? I think it was when Giddy was testifying. Oh yes, now you mention it. When the bailiff was dispatched to retrieve McGilda's music box from the scene of the crime. That's it! It was during that testimony! I remember finding it strange at the time. Mr. Graydon and the inspector seemed to be having some kind of secret discussion. It would have been possible for you to give Mr. Graydon the information he needed then.
You little toe rag! You're making all this up! I'm a respectable Scotland Yard inspector, for crying out loud. Why would I do something like that? Why would I be giving away confidential details to the likes of this bloke?
Admittedly, you wouldn't have had any reason to do something like that for no gain. But perhaps it was part of a deal of some kind. Then it starts to make more sense.
What deal, counsel?
I wonder if perhaps in exchange for details about the peephole at the crime scene, Mr. Graydon agreed to give a certain something to the inspector.
I'm sure I need not remind the inspector that, if found to be true, striking a deal of any kind with a witness would be considered a gross case of malfeasance. Well, Objection!
It's becoming clear that jumping in with accusations is this Nipponese student's speciality. I don't do that. But with the stakes so high, the prosecution is not prepared to listen to baseless charges. It is incumbent on the defense now to present evidence in support of this diabolical claim. Evidence? Just what are you proposing that the inspector demanded of the witness in return? The court must see proof of this alleged deal. If Inspector Gregson really did strike a deal with Mr. Graydon, then logically there's only one thing he could have asked for. That must be it. Bruno, do you think it could be... Yes. It's the missing link that would join all the dots together in this puzzle. So it's something missing, is it? Is it like literally something missing?
I must press you for an answer now, counsel. What evidence explains the nature of the alleged deal that Inspector Gregson made with the witness?
The missing thing that he wanted hold of. For the McGilda case or other things? But I think I know what we're looking at here. Because nothing quite explains anything new in our evidence, he says, scrolling slowly through it. I guess it's that. But is that even an evidence? Is that even an evidence? I mean, it wasn't stolen after all, anything. So by the look of it, it's probably this. On the basis that we still don't have the second disc to be able to make heads nor tails of the message. That's what Inspector Gregson wanted? That's what the police wanted? Is there some kind of deal after all going on? That what someone higher up wanted? That's the only missing thing. We've even found a missing bullet during this case. I believe.
Take that!
Inspector Gregson! Besides this murder, is it not true that you've been working on another very important case?
What? You getting at now, sunshine?
Is it possible that this other top secret case is what's alluded to in this newspaper article here? The classified secrets being leaked overseas from the Ministry of Justice.
How the bleeding Nora could you...
We discovered during the course of this trial the music box deposited at Winterbanks by Magnus McGilded. A special music box designed to play 2 discs at once. It would seem very likely now that encoded on the pair of discs that were in McGilda's possession are the leaked classified secrets. So I put it to you, Inspector. In order to recover the second of the discs containing those secrets, you covertly made a deal with Mr. Graydon, in which you exchanged the disc for details of the case. You little... Ah!
Order! Order! Order!
On the day of the incident, when we met you at Winterbanks, you said this.
I'll be taking that whatever it is of McGilda's down the yard, thank you very much. So hand it over.
No, don't give it to him. It's mine, that is. Mine.
I'm sorry, miss. But anything belonging to McGilda has to be taken in as evidence now.
Scotland Yard already knew at the time, isn't that right? Magnus McGilda was involved in the stealing of government secrets.
My orders were, recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the ministry, and do it on the QT, strictly hush-hush. And that explains why, when I presented this disc as evidence of the court, you objected so heavily, I presume. Because you knew that it contained highly confidential information. Blimey, not likely. I mean, I wasn't that sure of it myself. I realized there was a possibility, that's all. Inspector, surely you're not saying that in order to acquire the second of these music box discs, you did indeed reveal confidential details of the crime scene to the witness? To aid and abet this man and giving false testimony.
There's no other way that Mr. Graydon could have known of the existence of the Peephole. It's the only explanation. A deal was struck between these two men.
No! Ah! Objection!
If, and I stress if, this sobering assertion turns out to be founded in truth. It would mean that the second disc is, as we speak, here in this very courtroom. Wait, what? In this room? How could you possibly make a claim like that?
Because Inspector Gregson is a Scotland Yard detective.
What?
What's that supposed to mean, eh?
As a seasoned policeman, the inspector will have approached this alleged deal with caution. Certainly, he would not have accepted a gentleman's agreement in this matter. No, he would have insisted on having the article agreed upon in the palm of his hand.
Good gracious! Then you mean to say...
Inspector Gregson already has the item in question in his possession.
Yes, he does. He has the second disc actually on his person?
Yes! The defense demands that the inspector is searched at once. Definitely. They could only have struck a deal with each other when Guinea was testifying before. And Gregsy hasn't moved from the witness stand since. My lord, please, order an examination of his personal effects immediately.
Well, Inspector. This young lad wants to tone down his imagination. He's insulted me and my profession quite enough. However, if he'll put this matter to bed and dispel any doubts about my involvement, then I'll happily submit to a body search.
What? He's going to agree to it?
I presume you're aware of the precipice on which you now teeter, my learned student friend. You've made a most serious allegation against Scotland Yard here. If following the search of the inspector's personal effects no disc is found, you will be deemed unfit for court service. This trial will end, and my country's government will formally demand of yours that you are severely reprimanded.
That sounds serious!
Indeed. To have a visiting student make such a defamatory remarks about our country's most senior police force is not something Her Majesty's government will be able to overlook.
You're just threatening Runa because you're scared.
The accusation is beyond serious. You must be prepared for grave consequences.
It's true. I can't imagine Gregson would have accepted a gentleman's agreement for something so critical. This must have physically changed hands, which means the inspector should have it. But somehow something doesn't feel quite right here.
Very well, Counsel. You know the implications. Let me ask you one final time.
Yes, my lord.
Do you still persist in formally requesting a search of the inspector's personal effects?
Only one penalty. I was expecting Gray's circumstances to be way worse. I don't think this game's given me a multiple penalty yet. With that, we're obviously not withdrawing the request because it's gone somewhere. It has been exchanged. But it's definitely not an Inspector Gregson because he is so up for this. Of course, he could be bluffing, but I don't really see a Gregson actually doing that. So let's look at the evidence, or more to the point, let's remember an altercation. A random, out-of-character outburst where he was just like, I like to get handsy, I like to get like physical, I like to beat up some ruffians, you know me? Like, okay. So what you've done is you've basically put it on another person. I mean, I'm guessing he must know, but maybe he doesn't. Search someone else. Yes, defense formally demands the search be conducted.
Well, don't say you weren't warned. But your typical Nipponese stubbornness may well land you in hot water this time. Perhaps the lesson will do you some good. Fair enough, I've got nothing hard. Very well then. Bailiff, conduct a search of the inspector's personal effects, please.
Hey, what? Oh, yeah, good. Defense demands a search, but not of Inspector Gregson.
What? Now what's all this? I'm the one you're accusing, aren't I? I thought you wanted to search me.
No, Inspector, not you. Somebody else.
What's the meaning of all this, eh? Lost till at last, have your sunshine. The court shouldn't have to put up with this nonsense. You're being completely irrational.
Be quiet, all of you. Oh, it's you, Iris. I thought it was the Van Zeeks, wanting to know the truth. Bruno's doing what you all told him to do, having the courage of his convictions. So you should respect that and listen to what he has to say in good faith. Because that's the British way.
Well said, young lady. Indeed, this court is in awe of the defense counsel's conviction and eagerly awaits his next words. You what? Now don't be hasty, my lord.
If I'm not mistaken about the thing I've seen in court today. A thing? But it's really a thing. I'm fairly sure that I know who has that disc at the moment. There's only one person it can be.
Counsel, of whom do you request this search now?
I mean, we didn't see him palm it off to his other brother, right?
Take that!
Of my lord, Mr. Nash Skulkin.
Well, I never!
Blimey! Me? Him?
Very well then. Bailiff, restrain the witness and conduct a thorough search of his personal effects.
Hold it!
Please, my lord. Inspector, Scotland Yard has to object to this search.
Objection!
Unfortunately for you, Inspector, your objections carry no weight here. In this courtroom, only the prosecution and the defense have the authority to object.
But Lord Van Zeeks!
I have no idea what forces are in play that might influence your actions. But personally, I have no intention of obstructing the course of this trial.
A bailiff, and carry out the search.
Now hold on a mo! I don't know nothing. Nothing about no disc. Cut it out! Ah! Here, my lord. In the witness's pocket. I found this.
Good lord! That's
another music box disc. I don't know nothing about it. Nothing. That is the second music box disc left behind by Magnus McGilded. Is it not, Inspector Gregson?
Order! 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 Mr. Skulking, what have you to say for yourself?
Gordon Bennett! I mean, just Gordon Flaming Bennett! I swear I didn't know nothing about that disc. Honest to God!
Counsel, would you please explain what exactly is going on here? The alleged deal that was struck was between this witness and this detective, no?
Without question, my lord.
And then, for pity's sake, why on earth was this man in possession of the disc that the inspector traded for information?
Inspector Gregson is a shrewd, calculating man who rarely loses his composure. But at one particular point in this trial, he exhibited some unusual behavior for a brief moment.
I don't recall. What unusual behavior?
It was, yes, during my cross-examination of Mr. Graydon. Tell me, Mr. Graydon, when you left the pawnbrokery that night, was it by any chance with the second disc in your jacket pocket? I admit to nothing of the sort. While Mr. Graydon answered my questions, the inspector appeared to have grabbed Nash Skulking by his coat and was shaking him violently. Yeah, he did it all. What me noggin was going full clean off, I did. I was wishing I'd been born as my brother I was. And what exactly happened to make the detective attack you like that? I ain't got a clue. He just suddenly turned and grabbed me and whistled like that and started shaking me. Grabbed me, whistled my neck. Well, the police didn't you mention the third gun when we got down to the station? That's what he said. He held it right down my ear, all he did. But it's still throbbing now. The way the detective behaved then was extremely out of character, but looking back now, it must have been then that he did it. That was the opportunity Inspector Gregson created for himself in order to hide the disc.
Well, bless my wig. He hid it? You... I'm afraid I failed to comprehend the motive here. If the detective had acquired the disc he was after, why on earth would he then proceed to hide it in another man's pocket? This is a court of law. He could have submitted the item as evidence.
It would appear, my lord, that the inspector was not at liberty to do that.
Why ever not?
As the man himself revealed earlier, his current assignment has some special conditions. My orders were: recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the ministry, and do it on the QT. Strictly hush-hush.
Hush-hush! A top-secret assignment, is it?
As far as we're aware, the information stolen comes from confidential government communications. It would seem that if that information were to be revealed in court as evidence, it would be problematic. Does that sum up the situation, Inspector? I'm operating under direct orders from the ministry. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to answer that question. So, realizing there was a chance that you may be searched here in court, you took steps to hide the disc you had acquired from the witness.
And does this mean...
You only pretended to attack Mr. Skulkin in order to get close enough to him. Slipped the second disc into his pocket.
So it was all a pretense. Well now, Inspector Gregson, and you, Mr. Graydon. Are you prepared to admit to the accusation made against you of this alleged deal?
Admit to it. Yours truly. Please. Mr. Graydon. Clearly our Eastern visitor has an uncommonly active imagination. However, there's no proof that I passed that disc to the inspector.
Objection!
But then, how do you explain the reason why you knew about the peephole? I am under no obligation to explain. What? Yes, I lied in my testimony. That I admit, so sentence me accordingly. But that is all I admit. murder, leaking government secrets, striking a deal with a detective. All of it is this young Eastern man's fancy. I have no idea what any of that is about. You... What? Well, what about you then, Inspector Gregson? Do you admit to making a deal with Mr. Graydon in order to acquire the disc?
Ladies and gents of the jury, as a Scotland Yard inspector, I will declare this and nothing more. I'm acting in the best interest of the country. Whatever I've done, it's been in the name of justice. So, as members of the public of this fine country, I'd like to think that justice will be your guiding light when you're making your decisions. This is quite a quandary indeed. Rarely have I encountered such extraordinary tumultuousness in the concluding of a trial. And nevertheless, in the absence of any further evidence to be presented, I believe it is time we put the matter to the jury for their final leanings. Well now, as a fellow servant of Queen and country, must I say I sympathize with the old inspector.
Yes, he's a dependable man, I'm quite sure. In service, one becomes a good judge of character. Even crossing your eyes doesn't help when it comes to looking at this case. It's all blurred to me.
Well, as a fellow professional, I'd like to put my faith in the detective, really.
Graydon is highly skilled operator, stop. Currently in presence of idol, stop.
Detective has very much trust in eyes. More than this, I cannot say.
I don't believe it. These 6 jurors are... They're gonna believe Gregson. They declare their decision now. Is Guinea going to be found guilty? If I don't manage to produce some definitive evidence right now, then we're going to lose. Either some proof that Graydon killed Mr. Winterbank or stole those government secrets, or some evidence to force Gregson into admitting that he struck a deal with a witness.
Well then, counsel. I think it's time I impose on the jurors to declare their final decisions no. That is, unless you have some compelling evidence you have thus far not presented to the court.
If I let the judge call on the jurors to announce their leanings, Gina will be found guilty. So there's no choice then, Runo. You have to throw some more evidence at them. This is it now. It all comes down to this. Who do I present evidence against? Gregson or Graydon? Or leave it to the jury? Right, well let's count off the one that I definitely would never choose in a million years. And that is leave it to the jury. Let's face it. You've seen them throughout every case that they've been part of. Would you trust them to reach a correct verdict with their flighty minds? So it comes to Graydon or Inspector Gregson. If Graydon speaks, he goes down. He is screwed. Absolutely and utterly. He goes down for murder, capital punishment for espionage, and more. Why on earth would Graydon speak? Why would I be able to present evidence against him? So that leaves the only choice, yet again my favorite choice at all times, the middle option, Inspector Gregson. However, that in itself brings an issue. What on earth am I presenting evidence? What evidence am I presenting? Let's give it a go. Inspector Gregson, there is one final piece of evidence I would like you to see.
What's that then?
If you refuse to acknowledge that you did in fact strike a deal with a witness here today, then you leave us no choice but to examine this piece of evidence thoroughly.
Well, go on.
This is my last chance. It looks like I'm gonna have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get this detective to admit to the deal he clearly struck with Graydon. Okay. It's the one thing he doesn't want to get out because he's got to keep hush-hush. So I think there's pretty much only one option here. And it's in our possession, not his, right? We've got one music disc. And we have one music box. It is in and of itself the device that makes sense of everything. The device that actually plays out those governmental secrets. So with that said and done, I'd say it's probably that or this. However, I think you know as well as I do at this point in time that here ends another episode of The Great Ace Attorney. Are we at the end or are we not? I do not know. But with more to come, you can be sure of that. For our story to wrap up, I ask you to join me next time at the worst cliffhanger for more Great Ace Attorney adventures. I'll see you guys then for more. Bye-bye.